parte da zero.
Nogle
Ci sono questi
gange så er den her
elementi,
lortemobil
questi
en rigtig dårlig
blocchi di
mobil
costruzione
med
che
lorte
il
batteri,
bambino utilizza per
som
poter
ikke
poi
engang kan holde
costruire il suo
strøm.
cammino indipendente. La cosa fantastica di questi risultati sono stati, diciamo, la conferma della
Men det er
nostra
så
ipotesi
lille
iniziale.
fritte dreng.
Il bambino
Sebastian.
nasce già con una, chiamiamola, primitiva abilità di camminare. La cosa sorprendente è stata che abbiamo trovato gli stessi patterns di attivazione di questi movimenti di base, ma con l'aggiunta di 2 nuovi patterns che sono necessari al bambino per camminare da solo per la primissima volta. Questi 2 nuovi pattern sono il primo legato al momento di appoggio, alla veramente la fase in cui per la prima volta il bambino tocca il tavolo, il pavimento, e il secondo durante la fase di push-off, quando viene rilasciato e quindi dà propulsione durante la fase del cammino. In questo modo loro possono quindi controllare la forza che impiegano per poter camminare e quindi la velocità del movimento e controllare in che momento e in che posizione possono mettere il piede durante il cammino.
Nu kan jeg jo lige få lov at se ham.
Ha ricevuto molto interesse questa ricerca e questo è fantastico perché di solito si pensa che i neonati non siano in grado di fare nulla, ma non è così. Hanno davvero questa capacità già presente appena nascono.
Oh, good boy. Good boy. Stand up. Oh, stand. Stand.
Large jig dancing?
Yeah.
Ovviamente naturalmente il bambino comincia a camminare. È importante per i genitori sapere che possono stimolare questo cammino nel neonato.
Sumo boy. Oh, little man.
Un bambino ha bisogno di crescere, sviluppare a livello cerebrale e sviluppare la forza fisica prima che possa camminare da solo. Ma quanto più si può incoraggiare il bambino a camminare e usare i suoi muscoli, tanto più lo si può aiutare nel suo sviluppo fisico. Good job!
Så får vi jo lige babyen væk ind, min lille baby Sebastian. Fritte dreng.
Augusto doesn't seem too interested in walking yet. Because he's a twin, I can obviously compare him all the time with Elisa, and I can see his leg developer. At the beginning, I was really worried. When he was born, I immediately noticed he had a weak side. Elisa was 2 kilos and 700 grams, and Augusto was a little bit under 2. He was really tiny, so we had to stay in the incubator for 10 days. It felt really scary. We had him checked, seen by a special pediatric development specialists, and they gave us a lot of reassurance that he's fine, he doesn't have any problem. He's just lower in the development.
My area of particular interest is how exercise and physical activity ends up reflected in skeletal remains.
Åh, lorte.
I I come from a long line of people who like to pick up very heavy objects and put them down again. In my spare time, I am a powerlifter and a CrossFit instructor. My grandfather was a bodybuilder and a gymnast. He was one of the only people to ever do a gymnastics routine on top of the Empire State Building. One of the ideas that's fascinated me my whole life is not only how exercise shapes and grows your muscles, but the fact that it can also shape and grow your skeleton as well. If you do a lot of activity, your body is going to lay down more bone. If you're a couch potato, it's going to take away bone. Infants were my big interest when I was in graduate school. What I was really interested in knowing was, how does the young human skeleton respond to the challenges of standing upright and taking your first steps?
Hey, do you want to come? Can't you come to mommy? And by the way, he can pick himself up now. Like if he fell on the floor or if he sat down, he can go from sitting position to standing position to walking.
In my field, people have always thought that there was some sort of line in the sand where after a particular age, the activity that you did was affecting your body, but before that it wasn't. We tended to ignore how activity affects the bones of very young children, of infants and toddlers. I realized that there was this huge gaping hole, this deficit in our knowledge. So in 2006, I visited about 15 different museums throughout Europe and Africa and the United States and the Middle East, essentially carrying about 130 pounds of scientific equipment on my back to look at infant bones. I was really interested in exploring developmental changes, but across a broad range of time and space. So I was looking at individuals as recent as the 20th century, but also dating all the way back to 250,000 years ago across multiple countries and continents. One of the things about working with the remains of very young individuals is that the remains are very fragile. And when you're handling them and studying them, it's easy to sometimes think about the children that they were, the children that died thousands, hundreds, decades ago, right? But if you pay attention to them, right, those children get to speak to you again in a new way. You can get these very brief snapshots at different phases of growth, and that's incredibly valuable. The data that I collect is bone cross-sections. I mold the outside of the bone to get a nice replica of the outside of the bone cross-section. And then I take a couple of x-rays from different angles in order to reconstruct the inside of the bone. I ended up collecting data on over 600 infants and children. When I got back, what I ended up doing was developing all these different films by hand. It was such an enormous relief to see the slow, hazy emergence of these young kids' bones finally coming out on film. Yeah, so this one's actually pretty small. This one's probably around 1 year old, actually. Little. As I looked at the data, I could see that there were interesting patterns in early childhood growth that didn't look very much like adults at all. When you look at the cross-section of an adult leg bone. It looks like an upside-down teardrop. So it's really long from front to back. However, what I was looking at when I was seeing the kids, they were not this upside-down teardrop shape. They were sort of like a wide oval. And then it started to normalize and go back towards this adult-like. By the time they were around 5 or 6.
Sebastian.
Seeing the bones get suddenly wide was really surprising and was really exciting because it looked like there might be unique patterns of bone growth that you only see in little kids in response to walking. At the time, this was kind of an unusual idea. We were still stuck in this mindset that it was really only adult bones that responded to exercise. I'll never forget reviewer 2 on my very first paper of trying to publish this, who left me a 1-sentence review that simply said, "Children's bones don't respond to exercise." So that was the kind of pushback that I was dealing with from some members of the academic community at the time. But once I'd seen this pattern, I really knew that I wanted to explore this further. A unique shape just wasn't enough. So I started talking to a few of my colleagues about how we could possibly add some data from living children to this issue.
No. Liebe Sebastian.
Balancing.
You gotta come get it. That's it. Turn yourself around. Good boy.
He just had no interest in crawling, and then he sort of started cruising quite a lot, sort of walking around the table or along the sofa.
Yeah, he's almost got him with the fuzzy feet. He's got him.
But still finds that he needs that safety net. Even when he's walking up the corridor, he's sort of got one hand on the wall just as a bit of a safety.
Round the corner.
I don't feel like he's quite ready yet to take that hand away. It's quite a nice sort of comfort for him being able to hold on to the side of it.
Oh, it's a dad. Hey, buddy. Pass. Hey, come here. Come to dad. Come on. Good walking.
And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, he's doing it. And he sort of did about 3 or 4 steps and then fell over. And we were like, wow, that was his first steps.
Come over here.
It was a real proud moment. I feel like out of all the milestones that a baby has in the first year of their life, for me, walking was a really big one.
Where's Daddy?
This one.
Where's Daddy? Come on.
Sometimes I do feel like a bone detective. It's interesting because I'm always investigating this thing, the human skeleton, that most people would not find that informative. But I had this hunch that the unique shape of the bone I was seeing in individuals right after they started walking had something to do with shifting their weight back and forth. I needed more information. I really needed some living babies.
No.
Hi.
Sebastian.
No,
Are you gonna give it back to her?
That is much more exciting. That's so nice.
I contacted Dr. Kara Ackerbach. She works primarily with locomotion and activity in living humans.
All right, sure is hard. It's difficult.
You want it? Just stick it on your hand. Boop. So what we're gonna do is put several of these kind of all throughout her body, highlighting the major joints so we can see how they move when she walks across the floor.
No.
We're gonna see how many will stay on before they get torn off and put into mouths. And basically when the cameras look at them, they're turned into this collection of dots. And we'll get to see just specifically how those different joints are moving as they walk along. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big
Yeah, come back. You guys are doing great.